is Justin, and I'm just here to show you a simple InDesign tutorial on how to just work with some basic text tools in InDesign. Alright, so first things first, in InDesign what you need to do is make a new document. Alright, so when you're making a new document, first thing you need to do here, and I'm going to work through these presets because these are pretty important. Okay, so what you've got here is some presets up top that you can save if you wanted us to create a preset. Presets are actually really useful if you wanted to save a preset. Say you really make a lot of business cards. It's definitely in your best advantage to create a preset for that to save yourself some time. This intent is really important. Print, web, digital publishing. This actually affects the color scheme of your document. Sometimes some of the shortcuts that you've got up top, things of that nature. So what I would suggest is definitely, if you're going to set this for print, make sure it says print. So on with web and digital publishing. Let's just go ahead and do print. Here are the number of pages. Definitely have to know that. We're going to start with one, but you can add as many as you like in here. Facing pages, pretty important. This determines whether you're going to have a spread, as if you'd open a magazine spread, so you'd have a page on the left, a page on the right, or not facing pages, which are pages above each other. Now that's going to be important in some of the tutorials I'll do later, but I'm just going to leave that checked. So we're only going to have one page. Here's some default page sizes for print. So again, whatever you want, I'm just going to stick with letter. If you want a custom page size, you can add them in here. It defaults into Pica, which is a page layout format. You can very simply, if you wanted, say I wanted this to be landscape, and I mean obviously I could just click the landscape button, but if I needed a specific size, I could just say 11 and type in IN if I didn't want to calculate out the Pica. So I could do it like a document that's 11 by 8.5 IN. Just type in IN and it'll default to inches and calculate out the Pica for you, which is helpful. Columns, number of columns. Again, very useful as a layout tool, which I'll get into a lot later. So we can have as many columns as we like. The gutter is the spacing between those columns. Margins, everybody knows what margins are, the space between, like on the top left, bottom right, on the outside of our document. And here, very important, the bleed and slug. If you are doing print, generally what you're going to want to, and again, depending on, always ask the printer that you're going to be working with, but for most printers you're going to be adding a quarter to an eighth of an inch bleed. I'm going to do a quarter, 0.25 IN, and that will add a quarter inch bleed. Now bleed, just to explain what that is, which is something that a lot of people don't bother to actually explain. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to show you what the bleed is here. Now you can preview your document if you like, or you can just click OK and see the document. Bleed, what we've got here, the red area is my bleed area. This is my canvas. Somewhere between here, this black line, and here, this is where my document is going to be cut, probably like right around here. Okay, bleed is the area for your color or your photos to go off the edge of your documents. If you don't drag your document like a color all the way to the edge of this bleed, you will have a white border, okay, like a frame around your document. When you're creating a document for press, you always need to leave some error room for cutting. Sometimes they'll cut and it won't cut exactly straight. So when you're making something for full bleed, okay, you just drag whatever background color or pictures that are going to extend off the edge of your document all the way to the edge of this bleed. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so to work with text, here we go. Obviously the text tool is probably going to be our main resource, so I'm going to plug some text in there. First thing with text, you get two ways you can make text. You can single click to create a text box, or click and drag is the smartest way to do this. Click and drag, okay, and this will define a text box, okay? So, which we can modify later, but I'm just going to click and drag to make a text box, right? Now, I could type some text in here, obviously, or what I'm going to work with here, I'm going to show you a great way to add some default text. This is what designers, page layout, people do everywhere, typesetters. We have our type option up top, fill with placeholder text. Okay, fill with placeholder text. What this adds is lipsum text, lorem ipsum text. If you are concerned what lipsum text is and you would like to know more about what that is, you can go to your Google here and you can type in lipsum. Okay, and bingo, right here we have lipsum.com. Not a bad idea to figure out, oh look, what is lorem ipsum? Why do we use it? I would suggest reading through this because it's an interesting bit of trivia, and as a designer, people always ask you, what is this lipsum text? Why do you use this? So there you go, educate yourself. Anyway, so going back to our text here, here's our basic text blocks filled with lip-some text. Okay, important thing about text boxes in Adobe InDesign. Really important thing. You can drag this text box up or down. Okay, whatever my text box size was to begin with, it filled that much of it with lip-some text. Okay, if I shorten the box, very important principle in InDesign. Say I squash this box to half the size. If I clip off some text, this little plus shows up. This little plus means that there is text that has overrun this box. Very cool thing with InDesign. Say I wanted 2 columns of text here. Okay, this bit. I can click this plus. It loads the text into my mouse. I can then click and drag to define a second text box. And now these boxes, or a third in this case, if I wanted skinny columns, these are terrible columns. Okay, that was awful as well. But say for instance, this is exactly what I wanted. These text boxes are now linked together. If I increase or decrease the size of one of these boxes, notice how it changes the text in the remaining boxes. That is really important if you're doing multiple page layout, that you can link text boxes together. Okay, so that's the first thing to know about text boxes in design. You can create multiple linked text boxes. I'm going to delete these. To delete them, you select them, use your selection tool, delete. It's that easy. All right, a couple of things up here. I'm going to double click inside my text box, and I'm going to highlight some text. Okay, all of the shortcuts for your text, most of them, are up top in your property bar up top here, your property inspector. Okay, so here you can choose your fonts, obviously. Okay, so I could choose a crazy font for this, like Hobo STD. That's a terrible font. All right, I could choose, whatever you like here. Okay, you've got your bold, etc., etc., etc. Down here, the case types, you've got the size, you've got leading, which is the space, vertical space between your lines. Okay, you've got kerning, okay, which you can do metrics or optical to start with, which is the space between your letters. And you can do tracking, which is the space between the words themselves, okay, the overall space of that. I'm going to get rid of that widow there, the orphan there, and I've got text size, etc., etc., etc. Lots of things you can do. I'm not going to go over all of them because buttonology is boring. Color, one of the most important ones. I got to show that one. So you've got your color, your swatches. You can add it up here if you like. Okay, and all kinds of different things, alignment, things of that nature. So this is your, like I said, your quick bar up top here with a lot of different things that you can kind of very quickly judge. Okay, so go through that and try those out and see what they do. All right, notice it applied those changes in my document over here. Okay, now if you need some more advanced things, I'm going to highlight this word up here. There are some more advanced things over in our window. Okay, we've got type in tables, character, and paragraph. These are 2 more things that contain more paragraph and character, that contain more options. So I'm going to go into character. And again, you can see that some of the options are up top here. It doesn't matter which one of these you access, but some of these do have more properties than others in here. Okay, so for instance, okay, our character palette has some more extended options here, right? Like I could go in and I could do some things like all caps if I wanted to. See, there you go. Now that also is a shortcut up top here. See, all caps. I could do small caps, okay, superscripts, subscripts, all those things are available up here in the shortcut, but sometimes it's easier to find them in a more verbose thing here. Underline, strike through, ligature, all these different things inside here. Again, notice we got the same stuff. Okay, I've got my leading, my kerning, my tracking, so it doesn't matter which palette you use, up here or over here. Sometimes it's just faster to access one than the other. Okay, also the paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to type in tables, paragraph. Here's my paragraph palette. Now remember, you can dock these things together if you like. Paragraph. So we've got our basic alignment here. Let me go ahead and highlight this chunk of text here and show you some alignment options. Left, obviously now that one's simple. Align center, align right. Then we've got our justified text. We've got justify left, center, justify right, and full justified. Okay, all these very useful if you wanted to square up your edges. You've got these justified edges. Okay, and you can push things over here. We've got our indent options. Okay, left and right. So again, we've got our drop cap options. All that stuff is in here as well. Hyphenation options. I personally am not a fan of hyphenating. This is a great way to go through, and if you didn't want any hyphenation, you can select a whole chunk of text and you can kill the hyphenation on these. Now that creates all kinds of river issues and things like that later, which I'll get into. But generally, if you're going to force justify and kill hyphenation, that's a pretty standard layout thing. There you go. There's a kind of a couple of things that you guys can use with some basic text tools. Just a couple of things over here. One other thing you might want to see here, just that is very handy, is the type on a path tool in InDesign. This is a tool that lets you create all kinds of different kind of more fancy type options. Say for instance, I've used my pen tool, or I could use an ellipse for this. I'm just going to use the pen tool. I can pen out, click and drag to make a Bezier curve here. Something like this, let's say. I can create that curve and I can go to my type on a path tool. You can click on the path, okay, like on my path right here, right? And I can type out text on this path. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill with placeholder text. See, there we go. Now I've got some lipsum text on there. And now let's just copy and paste this. And you can see now I've got the text that follows this path. Same thing. I can go in, I can choose a font. Now here's a quick way of choosing a font that I didn't mention. A lot of people, I see them going through this menu, which is fine if you wanted to be able to see a preview of the font, but sometimes this is a little slow. What I'm going to do is choose a font here, and I'm going to roll through choosing these with my keyboard. So all you got to do is highlight up here and click through, and you can choose a font that way. It's a little faster, I think, sometimes. And I like to see it applied to my actual object as opposed to just as a preview over here. Same thing over here. You can click inside there and use your keyboard to increase the size. It's a pretty useful thing to be able to get more fancy looking text in there. One thing I like to do just to kind of see what this thing looks like without my bounding boxes around it is if you hit W on your keyboard. W will give you kind of more of a print preview. It'll clip off the bleed. It'll show you what this looks like without the actual boxes around in your guide. So W is a very useful tool for kind of seeing what's going on in your document. All right, there you go. If you again, and as always, if you wanted to see anything specific in any one of these programs that I'm doing tutorials for, just email me, justincussman@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to make a tutorial for you. All right, good luck. Hope you enjoy it.